We all know thoughts shape our reality, but isn't it weird how what we think always seems like it's true? It's almost like we're right all the time. Or are we? Because what if I told you that with ADHD, your subjective reality might be completely off? You might think a project is failing, a person dislikes you, or a job opportunity is slipping away, when in reality, things are going way better than you believe. But your brain doesn't let you see that, because your ADHD brain is secretly sabotaging you. Not to hurt you, but to protect you. And it all comes down to a little known system in your brain called the reticular activating system. Your RAS acts as a filter, deciding what deserves your attention. It was useful for our ancestors to spot danger, but in today's world, it often misfires, especially if you have ADHD. And that's when 5 sneaky cognitive distortions take over, reshaping your reality without you even knowing it. They make you act in ways that turn your fears into reality, trapping you in self-fulfilling prophecies because you act on what you believe. The first step to breaking free? Recognizing them. Take it from me. I used to be trapped in these negative thought loops. My mind convinced me I wasn't good enough, that I was failing, that people secretly didn't like me, and I believed it. But once I learned how my ADHD brain was distorting reality, everything changed. Now I live a life I never thought possible, creating content, traveling the world, and finally feeling in control of my mind. I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. And I want that for you too. Because right now, your brain might be tricking you. But once you understand how these 5 sneaky distortions work, you'll have the power to break free and finally step into the life you're meant to live. And by the end of this video, I'll show you how to beat them for good, using 3 science-backed strategies so you can take back control over your mind and finally start living the life you deserve. But before we get into that, let's start with the first way your ADHD brain distorts reality that can turn even the smallest setback into a total disaster. It's why before meeting new people, giving a presentation, or starting a new job, you automatically expect the worst possible outcome. This is called catastrophizing. And it's one of the most destructive mental traps ADHDers fall into. Catastrophizing is your brain's way of jumping to the worst case scenario and blowing situations completely out of proportion. But why? How does expecting disaster help you survive? Well, because after you've gone to the worst can't shock you anymore. Back in tribal times, this might have saved you from being exiled. But let's be real, messing up a presentation won't really get you kicked out of society nowadays. I know, you might be thinking at this point, but everyone experiences this. And you'd be right, to a degree. Here's where ADHD makes it 10 times worse. With ADHD, we don't just overthink, we feel everything at full intensity. It's all or nothing, either amazing or devastating. This is called emotional dysregulation. So when something small happens, like forgetting to reply to a message, missing a deadline, or struggling to focus in a meeting, your brain spirals into, they hate me now, I'm a total failure, or everyone thinks I'm stupid. And the worst part, you don't just think it, you feel it. Your chest tightens. It can feel like someone punched the air out of your lungs. This is also where rejection-sensitive dysphoria, hallmark of ADHD, comes in. Even the smallest action can trigger an overwhelming wave of rejection, hitting with an intensity that feels impossible to ignore. And because this flood of emotions is so overwhelming, you might freeze, avoid the situation, or procrastinate even more, which only reinforces the belief that you're failing, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the irony, the stress from catastrophizing makes you more likely to actually make mistakes. So the very thing you fear becomes reality. The truth is that things are rarely as bad as you're making them out to be. But this isn't even the worst mind trap. Ever catch yourself assuming you know exactly what someone is thinking? And let's be honest, it's never something good. This is called mind reading, assuming people are judging you negatively even when there's zero evidence to back it up. And for those of us with ADHD, this distortion hits hard. Because of rejection sensitivity, our brains are already wired to pick up on potential rejection, even when it isn't there. That means a delayed text, they must be mad at me. A coworker not smiling, they think I'm annoying. A short response, they must hate me. The problem, your ADHD brain struggles with focus, meaning you often miss details in social situations. So what does it do? it fills in the gaps. And not with positive assumptions, but with the worst case scenario. For example, you text a friend and they don't respond right away. A neurotypical brain might assume they're just busy. But your ADHD brain, it jumps to they're mad at me, or I must have said something wrong. Before you know it, you're spiraling, convinced you've ruined the friendship when in reality, they were just taking a nap. But here's where it gets dangerous. Over time, this distortion stops feeling like a maybe and starts feeling like a fact. You don't just assume people think badly or are out to get you, you believe it. And when you believe it, you act on it. You withdraw, you avoid people, you act defensive, which actually makes people pull away, turning your fear into reality once again. Because here's the truth, you are what you attract. The way you see yourself shapes how others see you. And if you assume rejection, your actions might be pushing people away without you even realizing it. But here's the good news. This cycle can be broken because the moment you stop mind reading, you start seeing reality for what it is, not what your ADHD brain makes it out to be. I'll share more about the strategies on how you can break this cycle at the end of the video. But mind reading doesn't just stop at one negative thought. It grows. Because once you start assuming the person thinks badly of you, your brain takes it a step further. You begin to think, if they think I'm annoying, then probably everyone does. If I messed up today, I always mess up. If I failed once, I'll never get it right. And just like that, one bad moment turns into a life sentence. This is called overgeneralizing. And it's one of the most destructive ADHD thought patterns that we fall into. It's when you take a single event and turn it into a sweeping conclusion about yourself or your life. And with ADHD, this distortion is amplified. Why? Because ADHD makes it harder to see nuance. So when you forget an appointment, you think I'm completely unreliable. Or make a mistake at work, you think I always screw up. Your brain ignores all the times you showed up, got things right, and made progress. Instead, it locks onto the one moment you failed and paints your entire identity with it. But it's not just about thinking, it's about feeling. Since ADHD emotions hit hard, even a minor setback can feel like the end of the world. So your brain reacts accordingly. Everything is a disaster. Nothing ever works out for me. My entire life is a mess. And the worst part, this fuels a cycle of self-criticism. When your brain convinces you that one failure equals total failure, your motivation tanks. You stop trying. You procrastinate out of fear. And that anxiety, it makes it more likely you'll mess up again, proving your distorted thoughts right. But here's the truth. One bad moment does not define you. And once you start seeing past the distortion, you take back control. But overgeneralizing isn't the only way your brain distorts reality. Sometimes it doesn't twist the truth, it erases it completely. Because while overgeneralization makes one bad moment define everything, another distortion makes you ignore the good moments entirely. You can have 10 wins and one setback, but your brain, it deletes the wins and zooms in on the one thing that went wrong. This is called deleting. Ever felt like no matter how much positive feedback you get, the one negative comment is all that sticks? That's deleting. Your brain is filtering out or ignoring key details, especially the good ones, leaving you with a completely skewed version of reality. And for those of us with ADHD, this happens a lot. Because ADHD makes it hard to regulate attention when we're overwhelmed or distracted, our brain locks onto whatever feels most stimulating. And guess what? Negativity is highly stimulating. So instead of processing both the positive and the negative, your brain fixates on the bad because it scratches that itch of I need to be thinking about something. And just like that, you delete the good. You get praise and criticism on a project, you only remember the criticism. You have a great conversation, but misspeak once, you replay the one awkward moment. You make 10 good decisions and one bad one, you feel like a failure. And here's why this is so dangerous. It reinforces a negative self-perception. The more your brain deletes the positives, the more you believe nothing ever goes right. It lowers self-esteem and motivation. When you only see what's wrong, you feel defeated before you even begin. It leads to poor decisions. When you delete key details, you make choices based on half the picture, which makes actual failure even more likely. And over time, deleting shapes your reality. Because if your brain only sees the negative, then that's the only world you'll ever live in. But deleting doesn't just make you overlook the good in your own life, it also makes you amplify the good in everyone else's. Because when your brain is busy filtering out your wins, it's also busy highlighting everyone else's. You see their success, their achievements, their perfect looking lives, and suddenly you don't measure up. This is the trap of comparing, the final boss and possibly most toxic cognitive distortion. Before we dive in, let me ask you something. What do you think about the word should? Does it sound like a motivational word? Or is it actually a word that destroys everything? Here's the truth. The moment you tell yourself, I should be doing this, your interest-driven brain shuts down. It's no longer something you want to do. It's something you have to do. And that kills dopamine and therefore motivation. This is why authenticity is key for ADHD brains. You thrive when you do things that you genuinely enjoy and that genuinely interest you. Not when you force yourself to meet some unrealistic expectation. But comparison, it's built on shoulds. I should be like this person. I should be able to do this as easily as everyone else. I should have my life together by now. And just like that, your brain turns against you. Because these comparisons ignore the unique challenges ADHD brings and set up a losing game. You see others thriving in areas where you struggle. You start feeling behind. You begin to doubt yourself. And this cycle, it doesn't just hurt your confidence, it kills hope. Because when you feel like you're always falling short, why even try? Since ADHD is linked to emotional dysregulation, these feelings of inadequacy get amplified. You don't just think, I'm not good enough. You feel it deeply. This frustration, discouragement, and anxiety can spiral into depression, avoidance, and self-doubt, reinforcing the belief that you'll never measure up. And here's the most brutal truth. When you're constantly comparing yourself to others, you're robbing yourself of seeing what makes you incredible. Because while you're busy focusing on what you lack, you're deleting the things that make you unique. And here's the thing, no one wins the game of comparison. You weren't meant to follow someone else's path. You were meant to build your own. But to do that, you need to stop fighting your ADHD brain and start working with it. You need the right strategies, ones designed for how your brain actually works. So, if you're tired of feeling stuck, if you're ready to break out of this cycle and finally start moving forward, then watch this video next. In it, I'll show you 3 ADHD fixes more powerful than medication. Real, science-backed techniques to help you focus, take action, and get out of these mind traps. See you there.